So the character Bloodraven just made a surprise celebrity cameo in the House of the Dragon TV show's finale for season 2. And a lot of people are like, damn, what does he have to do with the story? All he did was teach Bran a few things and help him like mind torture the mentally handicapped. And yeah, if you just watch the Game of Thrones TV show, that's probably what you think. But in the Game of Thrones books, he's arguably the most important person alive. He's probably the most smartest person alive. And he most likely is going to be the main reason why humanity even survives the war against the dead in the books. Even though he's also not a morally good person in the books. But I'll get to that later on because I want to get into some real predictions for this man for the upcoming books. But let's get a bit of the lore out of the way. Bloodraven's real name is Brendan Rivers and he is currently 128 years old. Which is a crazy fact, like this dude is not gonna die before GTA 6 and the Winds of Winter releases. And he is also a Targaryen. So yeah, in the books, Daenerys is also like far from the only Targaryen. And Bloodraven's dad was Aegon IV, also known as Aegon the Unworthy. This dude bedded everything that had boobs and moved. And he had a bunch of illegitimate children, and Bloodraven was one of them. Now I'm gonna fast forward a bit because I want to talk about the magical side of Bloodraven because it's much cooler and much more important. But very quickly, Bloodraven became Hand of the King. He had a crossbow that was created from a weirwood tree, which I'll talk about weirwood trees later on. And during his life, there was also a really cool and fan-favorite rebellion, the Blackfyre Rebellion. There's a bunch of YouTube videos on it, so needless for me to talk about it here. But here's some small lore about it and the facts that are most important to the rebellion and the most important to know about for Bloodraven.
Aegon, King Aegon IV, also known as Aegon the Unworthy, had a lot of bastards. He was a horny guy, and everywhere he went, he fathered children. And he made a lot of trouble for Seven Kingdoms because on his deathbed, he legitimized all of his bastards.
Yeah.
And then that created the question of, okay, now they're legitimate, they're not bastards, where do they fall in the line of succession? And when you're unclear on that point in the Middle Ages, you normally got a war to clarify the issue, and indeed that's what happened here. Aegon and his supporters rose up, or Daemon and his supporters rose up after Aegon's death against his half-brother, Daron, and there was the first of the Blackfyre rebellions, and it was followed by 4 more Blackfyre rebellions.
But now let's fast forward a lot. Bloodraven got sent to the wall because he was caught spying in the girls' change room at the gym. Which is funny because he was sent to the wall by the same king he helped put on the throne, but whatever. But the real crazy stuff happens in the main story, so basically Game of Thrones Season 1, Episode 1. Now this is where we get to the really juicy stuff. Now Bloodraven controls a crap ton of crows, as we all know. But it's very likely that he also controls animals like direwolves. These direwolves that the Starks find are very random. But screw it, let's just say it's a coincidence. Let's say these Starks finding direwolves in the wilderness is the same as me finding a used condom in my local water park that one time. But here's where things get crazy. Jon Snow's direwolf Ghost doesn't make any noise in the books. Ghost is completely mute in the books. But here's the craziest thing. In the first book, on page 20, when Jon finds Ghost, Jon actually hears Ghost. In fact, Jon is the only one who hears Ghost. Bran only hears the winds. Which on a side note, every time I say the word winds, I always think about the Winds of Winter book that we will never get. God damn it, George, fuck, but whatever, fuck, back on topic. But Jon is the only one who hears Ghost make a sound. And it's very likely that Bloodraven worked into Ghost when this happened. Because Ghost doesn't make sounds. But for some reason, Ghost made a sound at the exact same time Jon was about to leave. That's too big of a coincidence if you ask me. So it's most likely that Bloodraven worked into Ghost and made that sound for him. And what's crazy is that this isn't the only time where Bloodraven messes with Jon. It's pretty widely agreed upon that Bloodraven controls other animals at the Night's Watch. And he does it in very strategic and interesting ways. The YouTuber UltraTex was the first YouTuber who I've seen explain this crazy fact and call it out.
When Jon Snow joins the Night's Watch, Lord Commander Mormont has a pet raven. And the raven speaks, usually just repeating words that it hears, but sometimes it seems to understand what's happening and influences the story. When the Watch elects a new Lord Commander, the Raven says snow, 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 and lands on Jon's shoulder, which helps get Jon chosen as leader. The bird often says King around Jon. In Book 5, it says King Snow, Jon Snow. And just before that, the Raven appears in a dream Jon has, where he fights dead men with a burning sword. So, what's happening here? Many readers believe that this Raven is controlled from afar by Bloodraven. We do know that he uses birds to spy and enter dreams, so he's probably using this bird to spy on the Night's Watch and to influence Jon. Brynden not only helps Jon lead the Night's Watch, it looks like he wants Jon to be the king of Westeros.
It's funny, Bloodraven is kind of like Varys, but on like a whole other level. Bloodraven kind of knows like everyone's secrets. And I would bet my right testicle that Bloodraven knows about Jon Snow being a Targaryen. But what about Bran? Now Bran is where things get interesting and pretty insane, because Bran is most likely going to replace Bloodraven. And yeah, for those who don't know, Bloodraven's body is basically like half a tree. He's like the Chinese half version of the Groot from MCU. So yeah, like he's like half a tree and stuff. Which is a bit weird, but I personally let people do what they want with their bodies, you know, their body, their choice and stuff. But Bloodraven, just like the TV show, he is in like a secret cave. Not a very romantic cave to have like intercourse in with the redhead like Jon did. More like a secret cave to kinda like have privacy to work into a bunch of animals. And guide people to certain paths. And help save the world. And Bran is one of the main things needed to save the world. Bran and Bloodraven are kinda like Yoda and Luke from Star Wars. But Bloodraven is a lot creepier, which is pretty impressive to look more creepier than Yoda, but whatever. But Bloodraven did basically control Bran's journey for the most part. This is something that the Game of Thrones TV show actually got right with Bloodraven. Bloodraven's introduction in Game of Thrones is actually pretty great and pretty accurate. I love it.
You're the three-eyed raven.
I've been many things. Now, I am what you see.
My brother, he led us to you, and now
He knew what would happen. From the moment he left, he knew, and he went anyway.
How do you know?
I've been watching you. All of you. All of your lives. With 1,000 eyes and one. Now you've come to me at last, Brandon Stark. Though the hour is late.
I didn't want anyone to die for me.
He died so you could find what you have lost.
You're going to help me walk again.
You'll never walk again. But you will fly.
His intro on the show is pretty decent, but everything after kind of goes downhill. The TV show doesn't really make him a grey character like he is in the books. For example, in the books, Bloodraven is responsible for Euron Greyjoy. Now if you just watch the show version of Euron Greyjoy is basically like a cringy, weird Somalian pirate who loves to talk about penises and balls and stuff. You know, just real conversations. But in the books, Euron Greyjoy, well, how do I put this? This motherfucker is the worst person who has ever lived. This dude makes Ramsay look like the second coming of Jesus. Euron in the books is scary. The chapters that he's in is genuinely terrifying to listen to. This dude is in the books is a walking horror movie. If this version of Euron was in the show, the Night King would be like, screw that, I'm going back beyond the wall. Get me hell away from that Euron dude. But here's the thing. Bloodraven was most likely the guy who made Euron in the books. It's heavily implied that Euron in the books is also like a three-eyed raven like Bran. Euron in the books is just like Bran and he learns how to fly and stuff. And he uses these powers for bad. In the books, Bloodraven goes into Jon Snow's dreams, which I'll talk about later on in the video. But Bloodraven most likely taught Euron how to enter people's dreams. Because in the books, it is implied that Euron entered Daenerys' dreams. And giving her nightmares and stuff. And Euron is literally planning the heist of the century and trying to steal Daenerys' dragons. So Bloodraven low-key fucked up with Euron, man, not gonna lie. And that's just one of the things that the Game of Thrones TV show took out of Bloodraven's evilness. Or greyness, I guess. And same for Euron, the TV show took out Euron's evilness and basically gave him like a cringy, perverted pirate dude.
A finger in the bum. Not now. We'll talk later.
It's really sad to see, but Bloodraven is trying to do good. You gotta get that out of the way. Here's where that comes in. Most of you watching this video will probably have heard of the Prince Who Was Promised or Azor Ahai prophecy. The prophecy of a savior who is going to help destroy the white walking Nazi scumbags beyond the wall. Now I already made a video about that a few weeks ago and who I think that prophecy is talking about and who I think it is and stuff. But just like my family always tells me, I don't matter. What really matters is who does Bloodraven think is the prince who was promised? Well, I don't even know if Bloodraven knows that answer. There's some theories that Bloodraven has associates working for Daenerys and controlling Daenerys, just like how Bloodraven is controlling Jon Snow's life. But I won't get into that here because it doesn't matter as much. Because the thing that really matters is how much work Bloodraven is putting against the fight against the White Walkers. This dude is 128 years old, working harder than most 20-year-olds. This 128-year-old dude is working hard to stop the White Walkers at this age. That's what you call working overtime. And yeah, I already told you how he manipulated Jon to pick up his direwolf, but Bloodraven has been doing more than that. Bloodraven has been doing way more work than that actually. Bloodraven definitely sees Jon Snow's potential, because Jon Snow not only has Targaryen magic, but he also has the magic of the old gods. And Bloodraven does go into Jon Snow's dreams, and possibly gives him dreams where Jon Snow is fighting with a flaming sword just like how Azor Ahai did. And it's all like really interesting stuff.
With all of his wisdom and visions as a Targaryen and a Greenseer, Brynden must have worked out that Jon is probably Azor Ahai, and this explains why Brynden helps him. In fact, it might explain a lot of what Brynden does. Judging by Aerys and Rhaegar's marriages, it seems that a particular Targaryen bloodline is expected to produce Azor Ahai. Maybe the reason why Brynden was so focused on stopping the Blackfyres wasn't just politics or beef with Bittersteel, it was Brynden trying to protect the special bloodline that he believed led to the hero who'd save the world. This might have been why King Aerys refused to have children, why Egg was chosen as king, even why Egg married a Blackwood with the blood of the first man. This might all have been Bloodraven's influence, guiding the Targaryens on a 100-year Bene Gesseritine eugenic quest to breed Azor Ahai. There's no knowing how deep this goes, but at the very least, it looks like Brynden helps Jon because he believes that Jon is the hero Westeros needs, the rightful king, Azor Ahai, the hero who'll save the world, with the help of the Greenseer Bran.
So what is Bloodraven going to cook in the future? Well, I mean, this dude is like 128 years old, like come on, eventually you gotta die out and say, I'ma head out. Like you're probably not gonna hit your peak at the age of 129, you know? So he's gonna die. In the TV show, he just dies by the Night King.
The time has come. Leave me.
But luckily for him, the Night King doesn't exist in the books. So what is he gonna do in the future books? Well, spoiler alert, we do know from author George R.R. Martin that Hodor and the Hold the Door stuff is gonna happen in the books in some sort of way. George said he was the one who gave that plot twist to the Game of Thrones writers, so it's most likely that something that Bloodraven is gonna be involved in. And unlike the TV show, I imagine Bran will be really pissed off about this, about the whole Hodor stuff against Bloodraven. In the TV show, Bloodraven just immediately dies. He dies for a favorite handicap. But in the books, Hodor's death could be the thing that makes Bran use his powers to kill his mentor Bloodraven. It's some real like Anakin and Palpatine stuff. But even if that doesn't happen, I don't see a world where Bloodraven sacrifices himself for the Long Night. I do think Bloodraven will either die by the hands of Jon Snow or Bran. The other possibility for his death is that I kinda like is like how Luke Skywalker died in The Last Jedi. Spoiler alert, Luke Skywalker's death in The Last Jedi was, he basically overdosed on the Force. He took a fat hit and bam, overdosed on magic like a real man. And I can see that happening to Bloodraven. I can see him overdosing on like being warged into something and dying like that. Perhaps warging into a dragon, and his body gives out. It would be a pretty mysterious way to go out. But I imagine this will happen much later on, because he still has a lot more to do. I mean, he's very, very important. I mean, there's a reason why they showed him in the House of the Dragon TV show looking all mysterious. I imagine he will basically give the tools to Bran, and Bran will use them for evil for a little bit, but remember that he is Ned Stark's son and turns good again. So imagine Bloodraven's impact will be overall positive. But because his mentality is always like the ends justify the means, I don't think he will die the most like noble death. Or at least not a death that he wants to be remembered for. Like if you don't know about the lore of Bloodraven, he most likely caused like dozens of his family members to die, and probably caused thousands of deaths to bring Jon Snow to life and get Daenerys to bring her dragons to life. So just remember that he probably won't have the most like noble death in memory. He has done a lot of crazy stuff like a lot of others have said.
He still killed members of his family and potentially used mind torture and sorcery to do so. Not to mention how he infiltrated Bran Stark's mind without consent, and possibly did the same thing to other protégés. I talked about this in my Euron video. We can thank Bloodraven for Jon Snow, but we can also thank him for whatever morally corrupt actions Bran does as the most powerful Greenseer in the world, like skin-changing and unconsenting Hodor, and maybe even eating Jojen Reed.
I mean, Euron Greyjoy could also be the end of Bloodraven, but I don't think so. I don't think their paths will ever cross again. I don't even think George wants to confirm that Euron Greyjoy is Bloodraven's fault. But either way, Bloodraven is easily one of, if not the most important person in the story. If he died 100 years earlier, the world would completely change. And hopefully you find out more about this dude when George wants to finish the Winds of Winter and everything. Whatever day that is. But yeah, that's it for this video. Like, subscribe, and peace.